Welcome to the Corner Office, where we bring you the latest news from the world of commercial real estate, the greatest voices in the industry, and the corporate chats you've been missing. Let's get to it.
Great, Chris. Great to have you here. Obviously, we know you from Equites, but I think a lot more people know you from the field. Stormers Rugby, Western Province Rugby, captaining Western Province to Currie Cup win. You've got your own accounting business, CA from Deloitte. It's actually quite like a strong career, which is surprising for a Rondebosch boy. I mean, it's got tough upbringing.
You're going to start
It's
there,
a tough upbringing.
Coming from Kruinberg, eh?
Yeah, no, listen, at the top of the hill, we did look down on Rondebosch. It's just,
Yes.
I was just wondering how you managed to make it back up the hill. It's a long walk.
We used to do quite nice things against Wynberg in those days.
No, I remember winning most of the time.
Yeah, sure.
What is interesting though is I think I also played a game for the third team. I'm just surprised you managed to play for the third team and then make it all the way to captaining. Was it the quality of rugby in South Africa was down at that point in time?
I definitely was a late bloomer.
Yeah.
I was by no means a hot shot at school. I played third team rugby, third team cricket. Look, I only grew,
No, but I don't understand this. I don't understand this.
But like, imagine this. So I can give you the actual stats because I still remember it clearly. So in matric, I think I weighed 75. Then I went to varsity, went through initiation and stuff there, and I went down to 72. When I played professional rugby, I was 112 kg.
What?
So there's a lot that's happened since school and rugby, and I also only grew taller after school. So it was genuinely like a case of someone growing, having a very late growth spurt, probably when I was 21.
It's crazy.
And then slowly but surely getting into it. And then, people have got different paths. In some ways, I think I'm quite grateful that I maybe wasn't the schoolboy star, because I think there's a lot of pressures associated with that. Like, you must go and play rugby professionally. Effectively, I had no options. I must go and get a degree.
Yeah.
And then fortunately, it built slowly but surely after that.
But I've seen your brothers. I mean, they're both. I mean, everyone's pretty tall.
There's length. My father.
I said to Nick, we saw him out. I said, "Is Anton taller than you?" He says, "Go and ask Anton."
Yes, he knows. So my two older brothers, Nick and Anton, obviously you know them both, but Nick is the tallest. I think he's just 2 meters, and then Anton is like 195 and I'm 194. My dad's 2 meters, but we reckon with age he's shrinking.
He's shrinking a little bit.
So
Classic.
Yeah, no, but it's all from my dad.
Amazing. So let's get into property and then we'll talk sport later.
Cool.
Obviously we're both in the commercial arena. You're at Equites. I mean, you guys build beautiful buildings.
Yeah.
We've looked at your portfolio over time and how it's grown. I mean, there is an interesting story about olive oil and then some original scrappy multi-units developed by Andrea, and then a portfolio, and then obviously acquiring the Interprop portfolio, which really I think that gave a lot of impetus to the fund. And then it's just, of course, the story from there. It's just grown and grown, and we see some of the biggest and best-looking DCs in South Africa built by Equites. So I wanted to dig into the olive oil story if you know it. And then secondly, and that's Andrea's olive oil story. And then secondly, I want to understand a bit more about Equites in terms of the philosophy of the business.
Sure.
What they're trying to do, because really the spec that's being built is quite a lot higher than most of the stuff that you see in the market. I say most of the stuff, you'd argue, all of the stuff, other people argue,
sure.
So yeah, I mean, let's chat about Equites.
So I mean, fortunately, it's just us in this room. But basically, this afternoon's presentation is going to touch on effectively Equites' philosophy, as you call it, and I think it's underpinned by what I would think of 4 main characteristics. Like when we talk about the baseline specification and why we're so proud of it, and you said it yourself, it's beautiful buildings, but there's a lot that goes into that methodology on what we're trying to create for our tenants. And that baseline specification is on its 8th revision, and the development team are keep on revising it and looking at new ways to improve it. The first thing we're trying to do.
When you say the baseline specification, so you're talking like our floors will be built to a certain thickness and a certain MPA. We're going to have this quality of flooring. Yeah,
exactly. We're going to have 15.5 clear height, and we're going to have minimum 50-meter yards. Yeah, and we're going to have no plaster and paint on our exteriors. These are what we would consider our non-negotiables and baseline specifications. And I mean, you would know because you've been in long enough. Why it's at revision 8 is because not so long ago our minimum yard depth was 40 meters. Then it went 45, and now it's 50. clear heights also improved, and yeah. So the four main characteristics that underpin the specification that we're trying to achieve is the efficiency for the tenant, so that talks to the yard and whatever. The future proofing, so there are many examples of that, maybe dummy doors. Even our yards are often, our dockside are often built in such a way that can be both on-grade, and our on-grade are built in a way that can be retrofitted to dock. So if we have a change in user after 10 years, there is a way to future-proof that.
Clever, yeah.
A lot of people would say 15.5 is essentially future-proofing, but I think people have caught up there, and it seems to be, pretty standard.
The main we did like quite a deep dive into logistics a week or two ago with some of the top guys in the country, guys with PhDs in logistics, studied abroad, etc., etc. What they're saying is it really comes down to your type of material. So it's decide what your unit of measure is. Yep. What are you measuring your product in? Is it bags? Is it units? What is it exactly? And then try and work out the best mechanism to actually fill that cube. And then it comes back to, in South Africa, what can we do in terms of our build quality? That's our floor build quality. Because as you can imagine, any of these hoist trucks or any of the material handling equipment has to run on a super flat floor. What can we actually do, and what height can we realistically get to with the level of training that we have with the guys working in the warehouse in South Africa? And so those things all come together and say, well, in South Africa, 15.5 is where we need to be. Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously material handling equipment that there's that knock-on effect, and it obviously becomes a lot more expensive the higher you go.
Yes.
But, I mean, I was at the supply chain conference last week.
That SAPEX thing.
Yeah, the SAPEX thing, yeah. And what they were actually saying is that machine handling equipment's actually starting to drop because there's more demand for it. So maybe we will start pushing on that clear height. But to your point, obviously it's got a lot to do with the product and and what they're stacking. And then let me just go back. So I said the efficiency, the future proofing, and then the third one is obviously the ESG initiative that we pushing always. Looking at solar as part of our baseline specification, and there are a number of other things that we implementing, like our EDGE certification on our builds, which means we obtaining at least 20% savings from an energy point of view.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, which I don't think we talk enough about, and I think it's something that we actually, with the help of you guys, there's more to be said about it, and that's the fact that we go into triple net leases, which essentially means that the tenant is responsible for everything. And I think what we don't play enough on, and I think the guys that we interact with, the brokers, essentially also need to start working more on it, is essentially a better quality product with better finishes will mean less maintenance and less repairing.
Yes.
We've got a number of those examples, but I just think going forward, it's something that we also, from a sales point of view, need to play more on. So getting insight from the financial director on, what is their, in their current building, what is their repair and maintenance line, Are they going to see that with a large panel floor,
With this repair and maintenance, do you have a team, or do you suggest a team that they use to maintain, or have a protocol? Because you can imagine the guy comes in, or a tenant comes in, they are distributing cans or sugar or whatever it might be. They don't really have a great plan in terms of how to maintain the building. And I'm sure you want it maintained to a spec. So is there a protocol that they have to follow?
So we've got a great program. We've got an in-house ops team that essentially can do an assisted maintenance program, is what we call it. But it is, of course, at their option, but most of them tend to do it because they we want to be guided. Which supplier do we use, or which supplier did you use to install it? Yeah. When do we have to do this by? Because unfortunately, these leases are long-term. They're 10 years at least, sometimes even longer, 20 years with ShopRite. And to have the cadence of the maintenance is important. And it's also quite important for the tenant to understand that if it's not done, that reinstatement liability just becomes higher and higher.
Yeah.
And it's not ideal. We had a situation in Para and Cape Town with a tenant that essentially...
Well, it becomes replacement.
Yeah.
If you don't repair, it becomes replacement,
exactly.
And that's like the highest cost you can...
And then you end up having like a legal fight and a grudge match after potentially what could have been a good tenure. You end up fighting over... often is quite a sizable amount because the guys have just left the maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a relatively easy thing to do.
Exactly.
As long as you stick to the plan.
And like you may, I mean, we offer the assistance maintenance program where the team will guide you and get you to do everything that you need to do.
Okay. So effectively we're trying to build to a higher quality to future-proof the business. I mentioned, or we were chatting before about Prologis, right? So Prologis, significant logistics fund in the US. They have a similar sort of methodology where they're also trying to build the best, but they also are thinking about the environments that they're creating for the people that are going to be there, So often guys will go and slap up a warehouse and, good-looking warehouse and yard, and it works functionally, but they don't start to think about what it feels like to be one of the people actually working there. Let's plant a series of these trees and make a nice area to be. And where I think the office has had to innovate in that space, especially over the last couple of years. It's more of a hospitality type function that people are trying to drive into the offices. I think industrial was far behind, and what I'm seeing with the likes of Prologis and certainly Equites is that you're actually trying to make it quite a nice environment to work as the person who's there day to day. And I think that's an interesting take, given that offices are really pushing and then they're really innovating. No one's really doing it in industrial.
So, I mean, it's clear that for our business model and for what we're trying to achieve with the elements that I've mentioned already, one key element that plays to that is having a park environment. And we've seen it at Jet Park where, we know Jet Park's not always your greatest stock. There's a lot of older stuff there. There's also very few park environments. And I think why that park has done so well is there you're offering this island of secure, nicely landscaped, shared services in an older node, and it's just flying. And I think that talks to your point about controlling what you can within a park, security, landscaping, and it's definitely, it gives a nice look and feel to it. And I think you're right. I think there is a more demand for that kind of product.
Yeah. A different take on it, and certainly a different kind of product, but InnoSpace has done something similar in the sense that they try and take what was originally a lot of little mini warehouses, and then they say we're going to take one big one, chop the warehousing up and put you all in one really nice office with shared services and a bit more of a hospitality type function in the front. It's a similar take, doing a similar thing, different grade of product, but also I think a really clever idea and working well.
I think it's recognizing that, like you said, that the person now that's going to the warehouse or the logistics park is looking for something more premium.
Yeah. Okay, then you guys have got a UK-based portfolio, which must be quite interesting because it is quite a different market, right? I mean, we've got a lot of land here. They've got less land there. Although they're not terrible, but they've got less land there, or it's certainly more premium.
Correct.
In terms of pricing. As I understand it, here, I mean, you can effectively finance a development. So you get development financing, roll up the interest. Ultimately, you get senior debt at the end once the project is completed. Over there, you couldn't really get that. So the opportunity in the market was to use balance sheet to go and land bank or acquire land there, build the development, first valuation, and then senior debt rolls in. So it's quite hard to develop in that market. So could you draw any parallels between the two markets? There must be learnings from that side to this side to that side. And
obviously, what we've seen is that, it's probably still a year ago, things change quickly. And I think that market isn't used to inflation and rising interest rates. And I think that's been a challenge for that market specifically. And maybe it's not a year, maybe it's 18 months ago where it was a different story. It was really going nicely there. From a valuation point of view, from the market in general.
Well, yields must have pushed out given the
100%
interest rates. Yeah.
So it is challenging. I think what you're seeing there is a market essentially that's very uncomfortable with rising inflation and interest rate hikes. Yeah. On that point, sometimes dealing with like multinationals, and let's say this is their first property in South Africa, their first facility, and we chuck in a 7.5%. They've never seen that in their lives before. Yeah, they've either seen flat, with like the UK with the 5-year reviews, or they, some of them go somewhat flat. Yeah.
So let's explain that. Just listening.
Go for it.
So in the UK, you'll have effectively 5 years flat, and then you have a review.
Correct.
And then they go and calculate like some form of indexation, like it might be CPI, or I think over there they have RPI or one of these things.
Yeah, exactly.
Various different metrics, but practically they go and look, what did CPI do? They have a discussion about it and they lock it in. It's quite like a formalized
Correct.
program of escalations.
Correct.
Here we sort of negotiate, okay, 9% escalation, the tenant says 7, and then it's a bit of an arm wrestle, and then ultimately we land somewhere, but we all know that it's at least a 7% escalation
Correct.
going upward, right?
Correct.
Over there, everyone expects, I'm going to have to go up 2% or something like that. And now it's just like 5% year on year.
Amazing,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously, for us, it's obviously all a function of the length of the lease and these levers that we're pulling on a negotiation front. Obviously starting rental, escalation, then length of lease, and trying to manipulate that to make essentially the IRR work the best. These are what we're working with.
Yeah, because you'll get funding at whatever, 2-3%, and you were getting yields at sort of 4-5% type of thing. So there's almost like a positive cash flow. Whereas here it's almost always the other way around.
Exactly.
No land in SA. That was the other thing I wanted to chat about. What we're seeing at the moment is this massive demand for land.
Sure.
And just not enough land produced in general, but also at the moment even less produced because we went through a whole world event where no one's really done anything, right? So now there's no real land. You guys are sitting in some attractive pockets of land, but even you're running out of land. What's happening to actually generate more land? I mean, what's the insight into the market there? Obviously.
So I think Rihanna and Dre have got a great job on forming a relationship with the Erasmus family out in the R21, which has given us access to good land holdings and more. So we're okay out there. I think the major challenges, like you said, is that taking agriculture and getting it to that point is the challenge, and that's sometimes, obviously the delay in time. And I think
even service delivery.
Well,
there's not even enough services to start off with.
So this is the thing, and that's where the challenge lies. So, to find good serviced land and great nodes, it's to your point, that's really where the high demand is. As far as Equites is concerned, I think, we are Meadowview, we're closing out soon. Jet Park will be done probably before the end of this year. And then we've still got quite a lot on the R21. And that's, obviously, we've been quite bullish there, and I think it's done well. And we still feel that there's more to go there.
And some of your new builds, I mean, I saw you guys launching Spa the other day.
Yes.
There was
So
start turning there, yeah?
That's within Jet Park. And like I said,
what's that, 17,000?
17,000, for Spa on call. And then we've done another hazard store for Cargo Compass next door to them, and then for Normet, a smaller, but it fitted quite nicely in that corner. We were actually going to go do that on spec. It was going to be a 6,000. And then, these guys came along and we were able to do a deal there.
Nice.
And that's been great. And I think that's what's been great about Jet Park is it's given us more encouragement and validation on these park environments.
Jet Park, are we talking about the Old Avenge site?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. So on the...
Right at the airport.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just shows that I think a number of reasons. I mean, we chatted about the Prologis model, about creating nice environments that people feel that driving into a premium office estate or whatever. I think the security is a big thing. Essentially, all our parks, what will happen is you'll have the main security gate, which can lock down at any stage. And then within that, each unit has their own security gate. Yeah. So you've got two forms. And I think that's also a big thing. I mean, we saw what happened with the riots and stuff.
No, we saw the riots. I mean, we went to a facility now in Hammersdale, and the guys have actually put up water cannons.
Ready to go.
I mean, the fences outside are probably 15 meters high. I don't know. They're significant fences, and they've got water cannons outside there. So people are taking it seriously. These water cannons are serious.
Yeah, I mean
35 meters away, they'll knock you on your face.
I mean, and we're putting up riot walls and stuff.
Really?
That's what they want, some of our tenants. So, I mean, that's
and Tommy, it's quite interesting because, Andrea sitting there must have been thinking quite far ahead, because in order to accommodate the build that you're doing, which is a more expensive build, okay, in order to accommodate that in the rentals, your stock needs to be trading at quite a good premium.
Sure.
Or you need to be trading at the right kind of levels so that effectively you can accommodate or absorb. It doesn't matter what you do, well, to an extent, but you can't just go and tell the guys, well, our buildings are 150 Rand a square meter and everyone else is 85, because there is, in the end of the day, it comes back to a number in the end of the day. People can only afford so much. So you've had to accommodate some of the expense of building a building to this level, but you've been able to do that because of the profile of your portfolio,
Correct.
all long leases and really high-end assets.
I think to that point, I think repeat business has been good to us. Obviously, you've done a deal historically, and now there's more. TFG is a great example. They're not looking to go with anybody else. They like our product. They've seen the efficiencies that it creates. But to your point about Andrea and his vision and stuff, or two things I want to say about. The one thing is when we talk about like land banks, I mean, if you go and look at Terminal Park, it's Riverfields, right? Where we've essentially done ShopRite, 92,000 squares, and we've done TFG, 55,000 squares with expansion. I mean, if you think about that's on one parcel of land, right? Now, you've essentially got to hold that size of land ready to go, and you've got to carry that land, and you've got to be ready. So what he always says is you can't do these big boxes without holding a lot of land. And that's also something that we're trying to tell the market as much as possible.
But you have to, as a developer, you have to land bank.
You have to land bank.
Otherwise, you're not a developer anymore.
Well, and this is the thing. But also the understanding that, you know, the size of that land parcel to take those two boxes with 50-meter yards all around, it's massive. And the other thing that we've been doing, and I liked your insight when you talked about our beautiful buildings, and I know you guys at Galetti get our specification and what we're pushing and what we're trying to achieve. But I think a shift that Exco have taken, and then we've taken it like on the ground, is like the education element. So really, don't just say we believe we the premium brand, or you know, it's.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does it actually mean? And that's what, like myself and Akur in Joburg, and then myself and Vota in Cape Town have been having these broker engagements. We go through the specification. We're showing why it's different. You know, we're not lying. We're saying this is a standard.
But it's not only that, you know, doing this logistics course that I told you about, they were saying to us, you know, guys, you've got to realize that the cost of the facility is somewhere around 15% of the total cost of the operation. 65% of the cost of the operation is the human element, okay? Now, if that facility is designed so a human has to travel less in a day, or it's more optimized, means that I get a 10% saving on 65%, that's 6% of my overall operation. If I get a 10% saving on the property, it's a 1.5% saving on the operation. Yeah. It's fascinating. It's about what kind of, you know, to those super flat floors, you can use this type of equipment. This type of equipment is more efficient than the other type of equipment, you know, and so every single, in true logistics management, every single metric is mapped out throughout the day. Trucks dominate. They take superiority over the warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. You get warehouse management systems. And it's just fascinating that the construct of the warehouse, even though you might pay a little bit more for a cross-docking facility, what you save as your operation way outweighs anything that you're paying.
And I mean, the other great example is a pallet position. So, I mean, talking to someone like DHL, you know, they're not interested in GLA. They want to know pallet positions, which is great for us because we're going to 15.5. So they appreciate the density or the volume that you can store, the cube that you can store. And that just also talks to the fact that when you're comparing the two facilities, if you take that into account, actually, you know what, it's actually cheaper per pallet position.
It is.
Yeah.
And tell us about Andrea. I've known him as quite a meticulous person.
Sure.
He's got like quite a high attention to detail. He's also quite an enigmatic character to work with, you know.
Passion.
So tell us about his leadership style and sort of his vision for the business. Yeah.
My first interaction with Andrea was when I'd had a informal chat with Leila and Rian. I mean, that's how I got into Equites is a separate story. But my first interaction with Andrea was, you know, I could immediately tell how passionate he was about not only the product but this business, and like it really resonated with me. A great example, I mean, for me, this is the best example I can give you. So I'm doing this presentation for you guys this afternoon.
Yes.
He spoke at the SAPEX last 2 weeks ago on the Sunday, and I was there. Yeah. And one of the things he mentioned was about the box that we did for Premier Foods and the efficiencies that we created. We moved them from a place with a compromised yard, all the examples, whatever. And he mentioned something about the impact of them moving to the facility was that the turnaround time for a truck in the yard went from 46 minutes to 16 minutes. I couldn't remember what that was. So I just WhatsApped him. I know they're busy in UK. I said, when you've got a chance, you know, like, please.
Why don't you go back and look at the presentation?
No. Just, I knew he knew it. So I just said, just tell me what is the time efficiency that we created. So he came back with that. and then another message, and then another message, and another message. And it was like 6 of the things that he knew off the top of his head that had happened since we moved Premier Foods into that thing. And it was just, he's so in the detail and so passionate about the product that he's selling that he didn't want to just tell me about the 30 minutes that we've saved them. He wants to tell me about the solar, the on-grade doors, and the on-grade canopies, and that's
great. It's great working with a person like that. It's nice to have someone with vision.
And I mean, I'm obviously not on Exco, and they are based in Cape Town. So for me,
is that a hint?
Huh?
Is that a hint? For anyone listening out there, like Rian and Andrea.
So for me, any time I get with him and out in front on the properties and with clients is like golden, because I think what's really inspiring for me is how much he is in the detail on the build. And like when he comes up to Joburg, obviously he's got many engagements, as his responsibilities are, but he will always make a turn at the developments, go and look what's going on, and then he knows he's not. He phones Jean, he's phoning Impilo, he's finding out why is this like that, what is that? And it's that passion that drives him. He's extremely passionate about the product.
Okay, enough about property. We're going to talk about rugby. Okay. There's lots of questions that have been fielded from all over the office.
I'm mainly sure Wes was probably fucking sending emails.
Nothing. Wes knows everything. All the questions actually came from Antoinette.
Okay.
Who is a die-hard fan and literally knows everything.
Okay.
And could probably tell you more about the game than you know.
It's very, very possible. Yeah. Very possible.
First off, and I don't know why this is a rugby question, but why do they call you Pickle?
Yeah, it's not a rugby question.
Yeah.
And I've often thought, because I get asked this quite often, like I must make up a story, like something with a bit of power.
Yeah.
But essentially when I was like a lighty, I couldn't pronounce certain words like properly. And, as older brothers do, they picked up on it and they started calling me Pickle, one of the words that I couldn't say, and it just stuck. And it's just, I can't shake it.
It's always a weird thing. And then your brother's Nando's.
So Nando's, because he's chicken legs.
Yeah, and worms.
Worms, because he ate so much, they thought he had worms. But I've had mine the longest. So I got mine when I was 12. And it's taken a bit of a turn. It's now Pickles with the S.
Yes,
which actually came in from John Dobson. He started calling me. And then from there, the rugby acts just... You tell them once it's not Pickles, and then they don't listen. That's what it is.
Yeah, but now it's definitely Pickles.
No, exactly. Not that it bothers me.
So you obviously captained the Promise team to winning the Currie Cup, which was quite exciting. Last time they won it was 2014. You won it in 2017, and obviously you were playing in between there and the Stormers franchise at the same time. It would have been...
No, it was separate seasons.
Okay.
Separate.
So quite different. I mean, what does one take priority over the other? What is one club like versus the other?
It depends. So in those days, what would have happened, there was different management teams. So your Super Rugby had its own management team and your Currie Cup had its own management team. So you would start the year with Super Rugby.
Yeah.
You would finish that season, normally I think in May, June, and then your Currie Cup would kick off in July, August, and then end in October.
Yeah.
So 2 different management teams. But besides that, pretty much the same. What does happen, though, is normally your Springboks won't be present for Currie Cup. They go to international duty, where probably why I got more game time for Province. And then with Super Rugby, you've got the Springboks involved.
Got you.
Okay. That's all obviously changed now. Dobbo's running everything. And it's also changed now, though, because they're playing in the URC, which now basically runs at the same time. So
and you were coached by Fleck,
correct,
then Dobson, then
correct.
Fleck again.
So that was my thing. So Flecky was my Super Rugby coach and Dobbo was my Currie Cup coach. I only did one Super Rugby with Dobbo, but that was the year that we were coached.
Quite different styles?
Different styles, yeah. I mean, I'm always grateful for Dobbo. I wouldn't have come to Cape Town if it wasn't for Dobbo. Dobbo actually wanted me to play Varsity Cup for him in 2011.
Yes, because you played a bit for Lions.
Correct. So I did Marty's Varsity Cup. Dobbo tried to get me to go with Kevin Foote, tried to get me to UCT, but I was stubborn because I wanted to prove myself at Marty's. In hindsight, but who knows? From the moment I joined Dobbo and his team in 2015, just something clicked. I took a liking to the way he ran a team, big on team environment, social, good balance, but definitely team first. And it was a pleasure to work with him. I think Flecky, where Flecky's circumstances, what people don't understand about Flecky becoming head coach, was Eddie Jones was supposed to be head coach. Flecky was going to be assistant coach. Eddie Jones then bailed, and Flecky took over. And why I say that's a very, very important bit to understand. People mustn't.
I remember that whole scenario.
So the players eventually said, we want to have Flecky, so they voted him in because Gert, then director of rugby, was looking at other options. There's that famous interview where Eddie Jones said something along the lines like, I've looked at Table Mountain, I'm not going anywhere. The next day he was on a plane. I'm to the England job. Anyway, but the why I say it's important bit is Flecky didn't get to choose his management, his support staff. And that's significant. That's what Dobbo's always done. Dobbo's had his two guys, a guy called Norman Laker and Davy Snaman. They are in themselves a team.
It's critical.
And it's flipping critical.
Yeah.
There's no one schneiding behind each other back. They are one together, and it's proven very successful.
Yeah. No, I get that. I mean, it's so even in our business, so we have a core, or cores of competence, and then from there you sort of build outward.
Yeah.
If you don't have people that you're used to working with, or just connect with, I mean, everyone connects with different people.
Yes.
It must be so difficult.
Yeah, and Dobbo plays a premium on that connection side.
Yeah. Making
sure that people get to know each other, spend time together outside of the the HPC, the high performance.
And the results speak for themselves.
No, for sure.
Yeah. And now, Anton, your brother, obviously took the decision to go and play abroad.
Yes.
You took the decision not to play abroad. You obviously had your articles through Deloitte. Yeah. You'd started your own business, an accounting business. And there were two things I wanted to chat about. Why did you decide not to go abroad?
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's so critical, and you've brought this up before. What would you change in professional rugby? Well, I'd change the career aspect to it in terms of getting people to think about their career and their life and life after rugby a lot earlier.
Sure.
And into that, I wanted to chat about Reboot.
Cool.
Or Reboot Your Life, as they call it, which is a great business that's a couple of people are running and have founded. And so I wanted to chat about those three aspects. Why didn't you go? Cool. Why do you think that's so important? And then with what the Reboot guys are doing, what do you think about that business? I think it's quite exciting.
No, I mean, the answer, I did one stint at Saracens between a Currie Cup and a Super Rugby, which was great. But it was in that time that by that stage I'd already had Walworth Consulting for 2 years, I think. And I just realized that doing an overseas stint, at that stage the business was too small for me to be out of touch. So I then said that I wasn't going to go to France or Japan or consider anything like that. The other thing is that because I backed Dobbo and I knew he was going to get the Super Rugby coach at some stage, I wanted to do a season with him.
I see.
So those were the two main things.
Okay.
But in saying that, I reckon I still wouldn't have done it because I was quite keen on staying in touch with the business in Claremont. As far as Reboot is concerned, I think it's a great initiative. I think your biggest challenge you're going to have there is getting rugby players to want to do it.
Because everyone's invincible.
Everyone's invincible. Everyone's going to be a Springbok.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to play till they're 40, and everyone's going to get the biggest contracts until you get that smaller
Not
contract.
everyone is Victor Matfield.
Yeah. No, these things change. And bear in mind, Victor came out of retirement, to do that.
Yes.
I think there's certainly a place for it. My hope is just that, and I think it is happening. I think people must understand as well, our first professional era, this country, rugby is still very new in the greater scheme of things. So the mistakes that previous professionals are made are starting to wash out now. I think guys, as professionals, are getting exposed to more and more of them. And I think they're getting forced to think more about.
But if you think about it, even in the early 2000s, the Springbok guys in the early 2000s, they were even a little bit out of the money. The money only really started to hit maybe post 2008 level.
And now suddenly there seems to be a bit more traction. And I think the guys are going to start doing much better. They've increased the salary caps at a franchise level, which I think is important and needed to be done. But nonetheless, I mean, people need to be thinking about that stuff all the time. I mean, I know a guy, so Damien Willem's brother is Ramon Samuels. He was on a great career path. We went to do a pre-season in France, and he got a career-ending knee injury, and he wouldn't have thought, that was it. But I mean, he's done great since. But that's how quickly it changes. Yeah. But for me, my whole motivation for it is not about life after rugby. I'm convinced. I used to always think, you must have a tertiary education, you must be studied. That's bullshit. I don't think that anymore. I don't believe it anymore. What I do think is that you need to stimulate yourself outside the professional game to remain stimulated within the game. So get something that doesn't distract you, but gets you going outside of the game. And I think it's important because it's going to expose you to different things. And it's also going to make sure that you're refreshed by the time you get back to the training ground.
Yeah, for me, and my sort of take of it is that, and from what I understand, and you know, I too played third team rugby.
Yes, so we actually cut from the same.
I too was 79 kilograms, but the only difference is I was 87 kilograms a couple of years later. But no, my sort of take of it is that when you leave the professional arena, the lights turn off. Like it's
instant.
It's like you're the last person there. You know,
it's instant,
and it's scary.
It's
you know,
instant.
and then what happens is the fans are seeing their heroes, and then they're not like. They're actually not able to really sort of fend for themselves. You know, if you look
Sad.
at like
Sad.
you look at some of the examples, and it's just like crazy to think about. You know, and I think it's that you think you can achieve. It's unbelievable what you think you can achieve in 10 years. Okay, and how little you actually, or how hard it is to achieve something. But what you can achieve in 40 is far more than you can achieve in just these 10. And everyone thinks that they're going to do everything in 10, but you're going to get far less down the line than you think you're going to get. To wrap up for me, you know, with Reboot, et cetera, is it's just, for me, it's such a great opportunity for guys to change the track of their career and also to engage with other people in that environment. Your statistic of 0.5% is like shocking.
Not
You know what I
factual,
mean?
but I mean,
No, sure. But let's say it's 5%.
Yeah.
It's still shocking.
No,
You know what I mean?
It's low. I promise you, it's low.
It's a crazy number for spending so long honing yourself into this very specialized sport or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you haven't like really thought that much further ahead. But I agree with you. To have something else that's going on, it also just makes you a more interesting person, right?
And I mean, but I genuinely, I stick by this thing. I think there's a lot to say about getting yourself involved in interests outside of rugby, which keeps you stimulated and refreshed, because it's a very small world, and you're just playing for Saturday after Saturday. Yeah. So to get away from that, I think is healthy. I mean, on Reboot, as I understand, I think they're going to be partnering with the Stormers now going forward, which I think is going to be great. Yeah. You're going to get involved there, and let's see how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, some good guys driving it. I mean, I obviously know Paul Wright. I know Justin Melk.
So Melky's very passionate about it. Yeah. I saw him at a wedding, actually.
Yeah, this afternoon.
Huh, really?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. So, yeah, it's great that he's driving it. He's passionate about it, and he's seen the need.
Last question.
Okay.
As you know, we're involved with the sale of Newlands Rugby Stadium, which is quite a controversial sale of property. Sure. You lived next door to it for years. I don't know if your parents still live there.
Bro, that's where I go and sleep when I go back to Cape Town.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
Ah. No, I mean, right there. What's it, Palmyra?
No, Campground Road.
Campground Road, that's it, Campground Road. What's your take on it? I mean, I love the new stadium. I think it's fantastic. I think he has a good sort of segue back to logistics, right? Yeah. It's so much easier to move in and out of that stadium. It's easier to go to the bar. It's easier to find the bathroom. It's easier to host all those people. And it's just a great environment around it. And then you look at the older stadium, steeped in history, but also just not really practical and functional anymore, you know? When I say steeped in history, not steeped in history for everyone. No. Steeped in history for some.
No, sure.
So it's actually nice to have a fresh new stadium and, you know, people have thought about the logistics of it. But, I mean, it means something to you.
People are resistant to change.
Sure.
I certainly was a Newlands fan. But then I played at the new stadium, and I think there's a lot that stadium offers, like you spoke about, the logistics element. I think it's a much easier stadium to be in, to access drinks, to get the commercials going. I think from there you've got many options that you can go to, pubs, bars, and whatever, and a nightclub. I think that's also great.
It's great, yeah.
I mean, I don't think the Slug and Letters is as happy in Newlands. They basically had to close down.
And Caveau.
And but let me say this. So I've played 55. I've played in a packed Cape Town stadium. I've played in a packed Newlands stadium. The 55,000 at Cape Town stadium is, from a noise and feeling of atmosphere, is probably equivalent to 30,000 or even 25,000 at Newlands.
Really?
And that's a function of how close everyone is and how locked it is.
Oh, wow.
And that atmosphere unfortunately is not as good as Cape Town Stadium.
So from a player perspective,
But I'm with you. I think from where the DHL Stormers are going in the future, it's the right move.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see how many sellouts, each had in a similar time period, because it seems like that new stadium seems to fill out all the time. It's so easy for people to go
rugby,
to.
Which is what you need to do. That's the massive thing. But no, I think change is inevitable, and I think it's a good change. Let me just fix the pitch, which they're doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Chris, it's been great to have you.
Thanks.
It's actually just so great to have you in here. We've had a long chat today.
Yeah.
You're a very focused person. You're a hard worker. You can see that you're bringing it through to the Equites stable, and we love working with you. So it's just been great to have you here today to have a chat.
Thanks, Brett. It's been a privilege to be honest. It's been great.
Okay.